All right, picture this. It's a calm, regular night. You're feeling confident, you're in the moment, and the chemistry is absolutely right. Everything seems perfect until you hear it a loud, unmistakable pop. Now, this isn't like the pop of cracking your knuckles or stepping on bubble wrap. This one is different, and trust me, it's one you'll never forget. A second later, pain sets in, and all of a sudden everything goes from romance to a medical emergency. That's right. What you might be experiencing is something known as a penile fracture, an injury that makes most men wince just thinking about it. Now, let's talk about what penile fracture actually is, because it's a bit different from other fractures. There's no bone in the penis, so technically speaking, it's not a break in the traditional sense. The injury in this case is a tear in something called the tunica albuginea. This is a thick, rubbery layer that surrounds the tissue in the penis, keeping the blood in place and making it possible to maintain an erection. Think of it like a balloon full of water. As the pressure increases, the balloon expands, becoming taut and firm. The tunica albuginea is like the rubber on the outside, keeping everything in check. When too much pressure or a sudden impact hits the erect penis, this layer can rupture. This rupture causes blood to spill out of the tissue chambers, leading to rapid deflation of the erection and, of course, a lot of pain. And that pop sound, that's the tunica albuginea snapping under pressure. But what causes this kind of injury? Is it common? And most importantly, how can you prevent it? Penile fractures almost always occur during intense, vigorous sexual activity. Certain positions and movements put more stress on the penis than others, and some positions are particularly risky because they allow for more uncontrolled movement. For example, if there's a sudden slip or an accidental misalignment, the impact can be hard enough to cause a fracture. Imagine this scenario. You're in the middle of things, and due to the angle or the position, the penis accidentally slips out and hits a solid surface, like the pelvic bone. This sudden impact, combined with the firmness of the erect penis, can cause the tunica to tear. But let's talk about the psychology here for a minute. Why do these injuries happen more often than you might expect? After all, shouldn't we instinctively know when something feels dangerous? This is where psychology comes in. When men are in intimate situations, their minds are often focused on the experience, not necessarily on their safety. There's actually a term for this called arousal myopia, which basically means that when someone is highly aroused, their ability to focus on anything outside of that feeling narrows significantly. In simple terms, desire narrows your focus. When you're in the zone, your brain isn't thinking about the mechanics of safety. It's thinking about pleasure, connection, and the excitement of the moment. And then there's the issue of risk-taking. Men by nature are often wired to take risks, especially in situations where they want to impress a partner. We've all heard about people taking risks to show off, whether it's trying to do an impressive trick on a skateboard or taking on a physical challenge without proper preparation. In intimate situations, men are often driven by the desire to prove themselves, sometimes pushing their physical limits without realizing the potential danger. Imagine this: you're caught up in the moment, the energy is high, and all your attention is focused on your partner. The last thing on your mind is the idea that you could injure yourself. This is the psychology of impressing, where people tend to overestimate their physical limits or ability, especially in front of a partner. When that happens, the risk of injury rises. And here's another layer to consider: social stigma and embarrassment. If you ask men why they delay seeking medical treatment after an injury, one common answer is fear of embarrassment. Picture this: you're in the ER and you have to explain that you believe you've fractured your penis. There's a certain discomfort and shame associated with this injury because it's so rare and feels so intimate. This fear often leads men to delay treatment, hoping that the injury will heal on its own, even when it usually requires surgery to properly mend. Now, you might be thinking, can't this just heal on its own if I'm careful? Well, unfortunately, that's not the case. The tunica albuginea is a tough but sensitive structure, and once it's torn, it doesn't naturally heal without intervention. Without prompt treatment, complications can develop. These complications can include the formation of scar tissue, permanent curvature, and even erectile dysfunction. It's like trying to walk off a broken finger without a splint. Chances are it'll heal incorrectly. The same concept applies here. But what happens if you do go to the ER? First, let's talk about what that experience is like. Once you arrive, a doctor will likely perform a physical exam to assess the extent of the damage. This can be nerve-wracking, especially because most men are unfamiliar with this kind of injury. But the sooner you seek help, the better the chances of a full recovery. Surgery is typically required to repair the tunica albuginea. The goal of the surgery is to carefully stitch up the torn tissue, allowing it to heal in the proper alignment. While surgery might sound intimidating, it's usually a straightforward procedure performed by a urologist, and the success rate is very high. Recovery, however, takes time, and it's important to avoid any activity that could put stress on the area for a while. Once the injury is repaired, most men make a full recovery, but it's a process that requires patience. Doctors typically advise against any intimate activities for a certain period, usually a few months, to ensure that the tissue fully heals. So how can you prevent this kind of injury? Prevention is all about mindfulness and understanding your limits. One way to prevent penile fracture is to be cautious and aware of positions that might put you at risk. If a certain angle or motion feels uncomfortable, it's important to listen to your body and make adjustments. Sometimes a slow or more controlled approach can reduce the likelihood of injury while also enhancing intimacy and connection with your partner. But there's more to prevention than just physical caution. The psychology of self-awareness is also crucial. Many times, men feel the need to perform or prove themselves, which can lead them to take risks that they normally wouldn't. By recognizing this impulse and being aware of the drive to impress, men can make safer choices without sacrificing the quality of the experience. Studies even show that a more relaxed, less performance-driven approach often leads to better experiences and less risk of injury. It's also worth noting that partners often appreciate a gentler, more mindful approach. Studies suggest that when men take their time focusing on connection rather than intense, potentially risky movements, their partners feel more comfortable and connected. This doesn't mean there's no room for passion, but rather that a balanced approach can make all the difference. At the end of the day, understanding penile fracture is about knowing your body, being aware of your impulses, and making choices that prioritize both pleasure and safety. After all, intimacy is supposed to be enjoyable and fulfilling, not a fast track to the ER. By being mindful, men can avoid situations that might lead to injury, allowing for exciting and safe. So remember, there's no shame in being cautious. In fact, taking care of your body is a sign of respect for yourself and your partner. And if the worst does happen, don't let embarrassment stop you from seeking the help you need. The quicker you get medical attention, the better your chances for a full and healthy recovery.